Hello, my name is Alex Isles and welcome to Bamburgh Castle. And in this episode I'm going to introduce you to Bamburgh Castle and some of the stories associated with this amazing fortress. So to start off with, I'm going to take you back to the last ice age, and around about 10,000 years ago the ice started to melt, and as it started to melt, the north of England was revealed again after hundreds of thousands of years of being under ice sheets. So to give you an idea, you could have walked as a Stone Age European from the mainland of Europe across into the British Isles, and you would have followed the animal migrations during the summer. So during the summertime you migrate into the British Isles, and then in the winter you go back into France, into Spain, into Italy for the warmer climate down there. And people were doing this for hundreds if not thousands of years, backwards and forwards, following migration routes. So what would have happened is, as you come across this great plain across from the Netherlands or from northern France and then angling upwards, you would have come across this huge plain and seen this rocky outcrop of black stone. And much like Hadrian's Wall, Bamburgh Castle is built on whinstone, and you can see my episode on whinstone if you search for it on my channel. But we would have come across and seen this whinstone rock here, and it would be a perfect location as a hunter-gatherer for you to come to, because at night time you want a safe place. During the daytime you're going to go down to the sea or to the rock pools and collect food, fish, shellfish, things like that to survive. And then you also would want to go out and hunt the animals that live in and around the British Isles. And back then there was still megafauna, species that today have now gone extinct. But you're wanting to hunt these giant animals that are roaming across the landscape. So you're going across the British Isles and you're hunting, but at night time those megafauna are also what makes it dangerous, because you've still got cave lions, you've still got bears, you've got other wild animals as well as packs of wolves. So the British Isles is not necessarily a safe place at night time, just as much as it isn't a safe place in the daytime back then. So you want a place where you can set up and be safe. And so people would come to places like this and they would set up, and we know in and around Bamburgh Castle they found Stone Age tools, so we know they were living and residing in this area. As we move on in history, we come into the Neolithic, the New Stone Age. And when you come into the New Stone Age, a new population group of farmers enters the British Isles. This new population group would have been looking for land, and the east coast of Britain was a fantastic location for farming and still is to this day. And so they would have settled and built small villages in and around the location. Moving through history, we come to a new population group again, and this is the Bronze Age peoples. These are a new migration of peoples who come across from Europe. They inhabit the British Isles, and they bring with them bronze technology, the ability to cast and make bronze tools. Now, as they come in with the bronze technology, we see all over Northumberland their burials, because they bring new burial practices into the British Isles. And these burial practices are really interesting. They're called kist burials, and it's a stone-lined grave with the person normally in a fetal position, curled up on their side, lying within the ground. And then alongside that, they bury pottery in and amongst with them. So that's the new burials they bring in the Bronze Age, and around Bamburgh we've discovered a couple of these in the location. So again, the Bronze Age people are seeing the importance of Bamburgh as a fortress and a place to live. Now, as we're moving in from the Bronze Age into the Iron Age, so that late Bronze Age period into the Iron Age, what we have is a new tribe being formed up here in the northeast of England, and this tribe is the Vortodini. Now, the Vortodini is their Roman name. We don't know what they would have called themselves, but later on into the Dark Ages we know that there's a tribe around Edinburgh in the northeast of England, in the northern part of Northumberland, called the Gogodin. So it could be that the Vortodini and the Gogodin are the same people. But when we have these peoples up here in the northeast of England, you have the large Vortodini tribe, and we know that Bamburgh would have been one of their fortresses. Now, the interesting thing is, throughout the whole Roman period, it seems that the Vortodini tried to keep themselves allied to the Romans. There's not much evidence of their tribal locations being attacked by Romans, being destroyed, or anything like that. And so they probably supplied goods to Hadrian's Wall, and in turn the Romans kept them on side with gifts. Though on occasion we do know that they probably would have sent young men to attack Hadrian's Wall in northern Britain. As we move into the late Roman period, recent excavations here at Bamburgh have actually discovered that there was large roundhouses on the site of what would become Bamburgh Castle. So we presume that this was a Vortodini or a Gogodian fortress in the late Roman period, or in that start of the Dark Ages, that period which is sometimes referred to as the Age of Arthur. So there was something going on here around Bamburgh. Moving slightly further on into history though, we enter the Anglo-Saxon period, and according to legend, from the coast came a warlord called Ida. Now Ida came up with 3 longships and he conquered this area, the area which would become Lindisfarne, which you can just make out in the distance over there, and then later on he conquered Bamburgh Castle, and I'll do a separate video all about Ida's conquests. But Ida came up here and he was a fierce Germanic pagan, and he was wanting to take land and take control of an area for himself. So Ida comes up here and he conquers what would eventually become Bamburgh Castle, and he turns it into his own fortress. So we see the Anglo-Saxons come up here, and this becomes his capital city, and his family, the Idings, become the dynasty that would become the kings of Northumbria. His grandson, Aelfrith of Northumbria, actually goes out and he conquers the whole of what we call the northeast of England, even as far down as Yorkshire, and he becomes known as the Twister because no one can pin him down. He then falls out with his brother-in-law and gets killed in battle, and when he falls out with his brother-in-law becomes King Edwin of Northumbria, and when he becomes King of Northumbria he rules for another 8 years before he in turn is killed by his adopted brother Cadwalla of Wales, of North Wales. So Cadwalla kills Edwin, and then after that Aelfrith's son Oswald comes back, and Oswald is a Christian. He comes back to Northumbria and he sets up his own new kingdom under God. And when he sets it up under God, he establishes Bamburgh as his capital again, and he gives the holy island of Lindisfarne to his friend St Aidan. And from there this becomes a capital city of Northumbria, and it stays the Northumbrian capital right the way through into the 9th and 10th centuries. In that period though, England is united together under one dynasty, the House of Wessex, and that continues until the Norman Conquest. And at the Norman Conquest, the Normans obviously take over England, and when they take over England they also conquer the location that would become Bamburgh Castle. When the Normans conquered this location, they take it over and they give it to Norman lords. But the Northumbrians are quite a rebellious lot, and so William has a hard time up here, and a number of lords of Northumbria revolt against him until eventually he gives this land to the Bishop of Durham, and then eventually the Bishop of Durham sells it off to what would eventually become the Lords of Northumbria, or the Earls of Northumbria themselves. But during that period the Normans start building a wooden castle on this site, and there would have been a Motte and Bailey castle on the site of Bamburgh. This is then upgraded in the reign of Henry II to this Norman keep that you can see here. And Henry II, as I've mentioned in my Newcastle Castles video, was an enigmatic castle builder, and he built all across the whole of the British Isles new castles to fortify his land. And so right here we have the castle built by Henry II. When Henry II built this castle, it remained an important castle in Northumbria, but not as important as the great fortresses of Alnwick and Berwick, which saw the majority of the fighting during the medieval period and was seen as much more important. In fact, one of the biggest footnotes in the medieval history of Bamburgh was actually the fact that it was taken by Richard Neville, the Kingmaker, who besieged Bamburgh, and he actually gave it the weird historical privilege of being the first castle in England to be destroyed by cannon fire. So again, you can see that's one heck of a thing to have in your history, to be known as the castle that was destroyed by cannon fire. From there, Bamburgh was seen as a little bit of a ruin. It was restored a little bit under the Tudor monarchs, but it was handed over to very poor stewards. And the poor stewards basically didn't manage the castle at all well. It struggled financially, and it was basically left as a ruin throughout the 16th into the 17th and the start of the 18th century, when it ended up in the hands of Lord Crewe, the Bishop of Durham, who refurbished the castle, and in his will actually set up a trust to actually maintain and to build the castle, and it turned into a school for young girls. When the castle was then maintained in that way, it continued, and it was actually quite an important part of the local area because it would provide schooling. It had a lifeguard actually inside the castle as well, and a pharmacy providing health and welfare to the local people. But it wasn't really until 1898 that the castle was rebuilt into its full glory by Lord Armstrong. And Lord Armstrong was an amazing industrialist from Newcastle who revolutionised so much of the technology in the late Victorian period, and was had a worldwide impact with the things that he made, the things he built, and his shipbuilding industry that he set up in Newcastle upon Tyne. He was also an amazing gentleman when it came to electricity, hydroelectricity, and water power. So he had great vision for what you could do with all of these technologies. He then purchased Bamburgh Castle in 1898 and refurbished it. So what you can see here today with this amazing Victorian setup and refurbishment is down to Lord Armstrong's amazing vision for what Bamburgh Castle could become. So I really hope that I've been able to introduce Bamburgh Castle to you and basically show you some of the stories of this amazing site that has had such a huge impact on Northumbrian history, and that you'll join me again as we go through this series and I tell you more of the history and stories of Bamburgh Castle. Thank you very much, and please like and subscribe, and I look forward to seeing you in another video shortly.